Hi everyone, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a walkthrough of the first assessment to give you a sense of the kinds of things I'd consider if I were responding to this assessment task. Of course, the first thing I'd do is make sure that I'd read and reread the assignment brief, and then I'd probably read it again for good measure. At the very end, when I'd prepared my response, I'd probably go back and check it like a bit of an audit. The assignment asks you to identify an everyday task and choose a human factors tool or method to apply to that task so that you can analyse the task from a human factors point of view. There's some tips on the kinds of things you might consider in that analysis in the assignment brief. I realise there's a lot of choices in this assessment. You get to choose the task, you get to choose the tool. You also get to imagine who the users of the task or the equipment or the technology might be. Sometimes when there's lots of choices, it can seem a bit overwhelming. So that's part of the reason why I want to give you a whole bunch of examples to build on the examples that I've already given you during our workshops. Here's an example of a piece of technology I encountered recently. As I was coming through San Francisco International Airport, this curious looking contraption confronted me. It's a water fountain. I'll confess I didn't know what it was at first glance, but it's interesting because it has three water stations. One that I think is for ambient temperature water, one that I think is for cold water, and one that's for boiling water. I remember taking this photo because I thought this was a design that I'd never really seen before, and I really wanted to know how people might use it. It's kind of what human factors people do. We stop and we look at tasks and equipment and designs all over the world. If I were to use this task or piece of technology for an assignment like ours, I'd maybe choose task analysis to analyse all the steps that are needed to make use of this system and to identify points where problems or confusions might arise. Perhaps a task analysis done previously assisted in designing the bench space to allow greater access than's typically allowed when the water fountain is in a wall cavity, for example. Making recommendations for design was one thing that we saw in class that tasks analyses can do, such as the case you might remember that we explored in the International Space Station. You might even consider comparing this design to other similar designs to it and thinking about the task analysis of each. When I tried to use it myself, I really wanted to use both hands to both position the bottle and then control the flow of the water. Having to manipulate the flow of the water with your hand on the side is useful though, particularly for the boiling water spout. Broadly, I think there could have been a bit better signage to point out what this was and how to use it, rather than relying on people intuitively knowing how to use it. Because, to be honest, I didn't find it that intuitive at first. The positioning of the water fountain was a little strange too. It was immediately after security and what seemed like kilometres from any gate. There wasn't another one of these water fountains anywhere in the airport that I could see. So I wondered about how useful it was to only have one immediately after security. However, people are also often coming through security with empty bottles, having just emptied them before security. So maybe this is the best place. So I think this would be a good example of a task or a piece of equipment or a piece of technology that could be chosen for the assignment and could be analysed using one of the tools that we've discussed in our workshops. One of the other things I happened to notice while I was in San Francisco International was this directory signage. I was looking for somewhere to eat. I'm often looking for somewhere to eat. but found the sign to be really quite confusing and a little bit hard to read. What makes it hard to read is the background design, which involves a crosshatch design with vertical lines and horizontal lines that appear to be part of a wider map reference for the wider image, but run through some of the text, making it harder to read. I actually don't know what the numbers on the sides are, whether they're a broader map reference or what they are. Imagine how this would be for people with impaired vision or sensory issues, or even just people who are tired or in a rush, which basically describes many people in an airport. It certainly described me. So this wayfinding intervention is something that could be considered in the assignment task, and you could use observation, surveys or interviews about the design to highlight any problems or find solutions. In both of these cases, I'd go and look at the relevant literature and help justify the choice of scenarios and/or the use of the tool that I'd chosen. It may be also that the literature can help you identify changes or solutions to the task or the equipment design that you've actually chosen to focus on. Now, as we've discussed, I'd make sure that any of that relevant literature from the library was appropriately referenced in an author date system, such as the APA referencing system. Having done all that, I'd gather up all my materials, I've made all my choices, I'd gather up my materials, perform my analysis, review it, make sure it's really what I want to say. I'd write up a script, as I've done for this video, though I'm freestyling still a tiny bit. And I'd add time for taking multiple takes of the video and allow time for editing to get those references in. And I'd review the video footage while I was editing it and at the very end before submitting. There's lots of ways of answering this task, so let me know if you have questions about your choices. I'm really happy to work with you and keen to hear what you're thinking of using for the assignment. But also, I hope you have a bit of fun with this assignment too, as we all learn better when we're having fun.